Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later because we're here to prove the age-old saying, the best things come to those who wait. After all, how would you explain this guy? Because he's pretty much perfect for someone like me who skipped the Kingdom Galvatron release at the time and now couldn't be more excited for this Studio Series endeavour. Before that, it is worth me mentioning that this video is brought to you by Transforverse.eu, a dedicated Transformers site based in Europe that has tons of Transformers toys across generations, Masterpiece, Studio Series, and plenty of other stuff as well. So do go and check them out. There's a link in the description below, and if you're based in Europe, I'm sure they've got what you need. I will just briefly comment that the box on this guy is significantly larger than I would have imagined. It really took me by surprise for some reason. But enough of that, because we're going to go ahead and get him open. Now, I did actually have the pleasure of seeing this guy in person at London MCM Comic Con, and it did look pretty good. Ultimately, a very different take with that matte paint on areas such as the face, which I think looks great, actually. Of course, we mustn't forget all his accessories. Plenty of bits inside the box here, including the usual little paper bag of stuff, which has got his little cannon end just there. Oh, and a little Matrix as well. Are there any other Decepticon toys that come with a Matrix, or is it just this one? I can't remember. And hey, I don't know if it counts as accessories or packaging or whatever, but you also get this rather natty little cardboard diorama in the box, which obviously depicts a scene from the 86 movie, into which you can plonk your Galvatrons, should you really wish, and that's the thing, some of you love this kind of stuff. I think it's neat, but I'm still going to be recycling it personally. That's because, as ever, I'm much more about the toy itself, and in this case, I feel entirely justified having waited for this version over the Kingdom one, because the colours on this are just sublime. That purple, the greys, the flat grey of the face, everything, it just looks absolutely superb. Big, strong first impression on this one, loving it. There's just something about the paint choices here and the overall presentation that screams cartoon Galvatron to me. Like, I can absolutely hear both Leonard Nimoy and Frank Welker's versions of this character when I look at it. It's just ringing in my ears already, both of them. I think undeniably the biggest difference here is the matte grey face. And I say it's matte, it still does pick up the light actually, so it's got a little bit of sheen to it, definitely, but it's not shiny silver, which is what we had on the Kingdom one. And personally, I much prefer that. I think it looks way more handsome. It kind of allows you to appreciate the sculpt a lot more as well. It makes the eyes pop more, those like glaring red eyes. And just generally, aesthetically, I think it's way more pleasing. Colours are really good all over though. You've got some nice popping red on the little chest abs just there. Do you think it's a slightly strange choice to have purple on purple for the Decepticon logo? Like, it's very hard to make out without any kind of white backing or anything, so a little bit odd, but it is what it is. Of course, the other major difference here is the opaque cannon, because it was clear, kind of translucent plastic on the Kingdom version, and here this looks much more like the cartoon, and it's personal preference at the end of the day, but I think this looks way better. There's lots of other nice little painted touches though, such as this little bit of lighter silver with a kind of slightly more metallic flake to it on the sort of knee pads there, and the little red just here. That all looks fantastic, and just generally I think it looks fab. What can I say? The new purple is quite a revelation. It's sort of nicely shiny, and actually it's really lovely to see a proper cartoon Galvatron purple for once. Like, I know that sounds like it should be something we've had lots of over the years, but we very often kind of get this weird lilac colour instead, which I actually do kind of like, I do appreciate, but this is something that should happen a lot and really doesn't, so it's kind of a weird novelty even though it's so obvious. I don't know. Now, of course, there are a couple of small quirks from this design that carry over from the Kingdom version. I mean, first of all is this little bit on the back, which is kind of cartoon accurate. He has that sort of pylon sticking up at the back, on his back just there, but it just kind of wiggles, doesn't really sit in place or anything like that, so I do find that a little bit of an annoyance. The other thing is these little hollow slots on the arms. It would have been nice to see some sort of covers or something for that. I mean, we have seen some toys being retooled, like the Studio Series Springer, to kind of provide these kind of elements. That hasn't happened here, for better or for worse, but that is something that I would have liked to have seen, no doubt. There's also often a lot of talk about the feet on this toy, looking slightly stumpy, or, you know, a little bit like hooves, dare I say. Like, that is a word that gets tossed around a little bit sometimes for this design, and I can kind of see that. It was a critique I had of the Kingdom version. I think the colours kind of offset it slightly better here, but no doubt he is still a little bit stumpy. They could have been longer. Not gonna lie, these little hip skirts are slightly odd as well. I mean, again, they're sort of cartoon accurate in their way, but they're just a little bit cumbersome with how they sort of sit there. They kind of twist out to the side. It does make posing the hips a little bit awkward because they're kind of omnipresent, really. You just can't get around them. Honestly, though, all of that stuff, it's really just kind of small grumbles, little nitpicks, if you will, because actually this figure is a lot of fun to pose and mess with and everything else, and again, I just think it looks amazing. It's got a real aura and presence to it. Articulation-wise, there's lots going on. I mean, the head will move quite nicely from side to side. Doesn't really look up and down too much, but you get a little bit of a wiggle. Shoulders will move up and down quite freely and can go all the way up and over as well, and then you get a decent bit of bicep rotation in there. There are double-jointed elbows, so that's really nice. They'll come all the way up to the top for transformation. You do get this bit kind of just hanging off the back there, so that just needs to be kind of taken into account and kind of posed properly, but it's not as bad as it looks, actually. Like, you would think it would get in the way a lot more than it does, but you can pose it to kind of offset it slightly, let's put it that way. And in the good news, there is a wrist swivel as well, so that's very welcome. Really like the hands too. It may be a strange point because they're just statically molded, but this sort of sticking outy knuckle, just, I don't know, it gives it a little bit more personality, and there's a nice sort of rounded quality to them as well. Really good. Also got a very decent waist swivel going on there. Now the hips may require you to get those waist skirts out the way, but once you do, you get about a 90-degree bend just there, and you get a bit of thigh rotation as well. Decent enough bend at the knee, just about 90 degrees, give or take. Could have done with a little bit more maybe. And then, not gonna lie, I would have liked a lot more ankle tilt than you actually get here. You can get a bit more if you're willing to kind of de-transform things, but that does not look good, so I don't think that's really a solution. So yeah, that's really all you get, and it's not enough in my opinion. Worth also mentioning at this point though that you do actually have two tabs on the arm, so it kind of depends where you want to plug in the cannon, whether it's on the lower forearm or kind of further up here on the shoulder, and neither choice is right, neither choice is wrong. It's entirely up to you. It's your toy, you display it however you want. I kind of like it on the bicep, I gotta say. I think that kind of works better for my taste, but there may be some poses where it's more suited on the forearm as well, so options. Oh, and you can also wiggle these shoulder pylons quite nicely as well, so that might be of benefit when posing, because you can kind of move them out the way of his eye line and things like that, so that's pretty good. Anyway, all told, it makes Galvatron a lot of fun to pose, as I said earlier, and I really like how it looks when it's done as well. It's very dynamic, and it is a little bit let down by a couple of the joints like the ankle tilt and things like this, but you know, on the whole, really, really good, and I've not got too many complaints when it looks this fabulous, honestly. Looking at his other accessories, you've got that little matrix again, which just pegs onto the front of the chain like so, and then very simply, you just kind of want to plonk that over his head and let it dangle on his chest. He has so many looks, and you don't need me to tell you why this is awesome, right? Like, you know why this is awesome, because it just inherently is.
You will do my bidding or taste my wrath.
Anyway, then you've also got these little things, which are quite hard to forget actually. They are in the box, but they're easy to forget about. And they kind of look like Galvatron's ship, the Revenge, from the 86 movie, but they are meant to be like guns as well. Now, as I mentioned, you get two of them, and you can actually go ahead and kind of plonk them together like so, just tab them in to one another. And then you've got a little handle either side, so he can wield them in his palm, and yeah, it's something. I mean, that does actually look kind of cool. It's a very different design for a handgun, isn't it? It's not really something that I associate with Galvatron because his arm cannon is so iconic in its way, and it's a fun inclusion. You don't have to use it, it's in the box if you want it, it's kind of cool, it is what it is. Should you want it, then there's even a little bit of weapon storage for these pieces. They just kind of tab onto his backpack. I mean, for my money, that adds a little bit of unnecessary clutter around the back of the silhouette there. I really don't think you need them, but again, you could just leave them in the box or stick them in a drawer somewhere if you're not interested, can't you? Overall though, it's a great package for this robot mode, with some neat features, great looks, decent articulation, and just generally, yeah, I really like it. I've got very few complaints going on here. Anyway, in terms of comparisons, here you can see him with a couple of Optimus Primes. You've got the Studio Series version on the left and the Earthrise mold, or the Dramatic Capture repaint, on the right. And it's interesting to see that he scales way better with the Studio Series in this case. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we finally get a Studio Series Megatron. Speaking of which, here we have him with a couple of Megatrons. We've got the Earthrise mold, or it's the Dramatic Capture repaint, and the Generation Select Super Megatron, which actually was Galvatron originally in fiction and then was rebuilt into Megatron again, so that's kind of cool to see, and I think these three line up great. Here you have him versus the Studio Series Sweep, and I've got to specify that it is the Sweep and not Scourge, because otherwise someone will at me and say it's the Sweep, and yes indeed it's the Sweep. But yeah, I don't have the Kingdom Cyclonus mold. I'm kind of waiting on the inevitable surely Studio Series repaint of that, and then here you can see him with some other recent Legacy G1 Decepticons, including your Target Masters, Headmasters, Soundwave. It's all kicking off, isn't it? So, and it's just great fun. He's a suitable leader size, he feels nice and big and imposing, and it really works for me in that regard. He just looks amazing. And last but definitely not least, we've got the Generations Comic Edition Straxus, which is a fairly heavy retool of the Galvatron toy, although you can still see the same DNA if you go looking for it. But actually, I'm really amazed with these two, you know, how different they feel in hand. I think they did a superb job with Straxus, and it kind of allows both of these to work as their own separate thing, like the Straxus feels like Straxus and the Galvatron feels like Galvatron. Anyway, look, I could keep saying nice things about this robot mode, or we could get down to transformation. So why do we do that, eh? Right then, that's transformation done, and by and large that's pretty straightforward and quite repeatable actually. I enjoyed it on the Straxus version that I already had, and so I've enjoyed it here. It all clicks together nicely, it's pretty cohesive, it's unusual as well, like there's a few interesting twists and turns. I mean, I think a large part of why this design works overall is that it really doesn't overcomplicate anything. Like the end result is very pleasing and it looks like Galvatron's alt mode should, but the transformation is not a pain in the arse. Look, and if you've owned any of the third-party versions, particularly like the Fans Toys one, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because they're pretty horrendous to undertake, like just not enjoyable at all. And this is actually something that I would do again and again and again, and I would look forward to. You know, it's repeatable, and that's what you want. And as I say, the result honestly looks pretty terrific in my opinion. Like, it's exactly what I would hope for from a Generation-style Galvatron. It's about as close to the screen as any of those attempts have ever gotten, I think. You know, bar an eventual masterpiece, I think this is about as good as it's, well, certainly ever been. I don't know about ever will be. I really like the way they incorporate the back end of the arm cannon here into the alt mode. I think that's super clever, and the way the legs become this kind of turret piece, I think that's really nice as well. It's all just very sleek. I thought the same on Straxus, but the way that these waist pieces come into play for the alt mode, you know, just sitting there but also kind of squeezing it all together so it all feels solid, that's just very clever design in my book. And you know, it does take a minute or two to kind of get it stood stably on the table. It can be done, but you know, there's sometimes a little bit of a wobble to it if you don't get the leg pieces all in exactly the right place, but I think I've just about got it, and I'm just so happy with how this thing works, you know. There's some fun inclusions for the accessories here as well, because if you slide the matrix on the chain over the cigar, then it will actually tab into place on the alt mode as well, which is super cool. And that is a direct callback to the film, so you know, props to them for including that. I wouldn't have thought of it maybe, but it just adds so much. Likewise, if you really feel the need, then you can go ahead and tab these additional gun pieces onto the sides of the alt mode as well. It kind of looks a bit messy to my eye, but it's an option, I guess. Overall though, it's just honestly a very solid attempt at Galvatron's cartoon alt mode, about the best that we've seen in toy form, as I mentioned earlier. I honestly don't think that this thing is going to be bettered anytime soon. Maybe one day, you know, if they do an eventual masterpiece or something, but I think by and large this thing has kind of sated the appetite for such a thing. It honestly is that good. And really, I think that's my general conclusion here. I mean, many of you know that I have collected Masterpiece for a long time, and I've been kind of getting into some of the Generation stuff more recently, and what can I say? I think this is so good that should an eventual Takara Tomy Masterpiece Galvatron never happen, I'm pretty much happy with what we have here. I'm glad that I waited from the Kingdom one, because I do think that the new colour scheme is so much better. What can I say? It's a very obvious toot. Now, as already mentioned, this review is brought to you by Transforverse.eu, a European Transformers retailer who've got tons of stock in right now across Generations, Masterpiece, all kinds of stuff. So if you live in Europe, you should absolutely go and check them out, and I'll put a link in the description below. I'd also be grateful if you could leave me a like for today's effort, please, but otherwise, that's it from me. So have a great rest of your day, and TTFN.